Hey everyone, hopefully you can hear me all right over the sound of the water. I'm recording this one outside. But basically, this is just a quick comparison of Windows 10 specifically, compared to EdUBudgie Linux. So hopefully the screen doesn't shake too much, but we'll see. But I'm just going to go over a couple of commonly used programs. I've got a few queued up here, maybe a couple extras. We'll see. We'll see about timing. But first things first, you can see here the File Explorer that is in EdUBudgie, and here is the File Explorer in Windows. So you can see we've got desktop downloads, documents, pictures, desktop documents, downloads, music, pictures, etc. And of course here you've got music as well. And then you've got the C drive. Now this is a little bit different. If you click on File System, what you'll see here is that the file system is set up quite differently. But if you think about how often you go into the C drive in Windows, it's probably not that much, unless you know what you're doing. And yes, it does take a little bit to understand what you're doing in Linux, in EdUBudgie. But if you're dedicated, you can figure that out. Here you've got program files and users and so on. Here you've got some similar things. Rather than users, for instance, you would go into Home, and that's where you would see the users, and that's where all of your user data is. Here in Windows, users, Atom, and that's where all of my data is. So it's really, again, very similar. Let's have a look at another one. So this is something I showed in the last video. This is WPS Writer compared to Microsoft Word. So the starting pages do look quite a bit different. But if we do New Document, this is what you get for a new document on EdUBudgie versus a new document on Microsoft Word. So you can see the ribbon is very similar. They even both start out on Calibri body in terms of the font, though one is size 10, one is size 11. But I mean, you can even see here that the font options are in a similar spot, colors in a similar spot, paragraphing similar spot, style similar spot, head, insert. We got page layout then, whereas here we have design and then layout, references, mailings, view, help, section, developer, special features. So there's some differences, but not a ton. Let's go to view. Here's view on here. Let me open that back up. And you can see they're not all that different. Print layout by standard, you've got reading view, web layout, outline draft. Some differences, as mentioned, but very similar. Most people are going to use this for Zoom and choosing between a layout and maybe one page or multiple pages. And here you've got Zoom, one page, multiple pages. So the commonly used features are in basically the same spot, basically work the same way. Something I do want to note is you can save this as a regular .docx, and in fact, docx is the standard for WPS. If you don't know the difference between the doc and docx, or XLS and XLSX, that X adds an open source component to it. Essentially, Windows, under pressure from the rest of the industry and from users, to my understanding, decided to go with an open source format, and so that's essentially what you see here with docx being able to be used for a free bit of software kit. Again, this one's not open source, but free. So let's close that one down. We'll open up the Spreadsheet app. And as you would probably suspect, the differences are similar. I know that sounds kind of oxymoronic, but here is the Excel opening page and the WPS opening page. So we can open up a new document here, open a new document here, and then have a look at the ribbons. There are some differences. Let me make this a little bit wider. Show a little bit more. But you'll see they're similar. Again, fonts in the same spot, both start on Calibri 11, paragraphing, merge and center and wrap text, general, and this is the number schemes that you can use, conditional formatting, format as tables. This does have different styles right here, which I am not sure about on this one actually. But those are default styles that you can manually do. So you can change the color and the highlighting and bold and so on yourself. It is a nice feature to have in Excel. Not really a needed one, I don't think, but it's convenient. And then insert, delete, format, and so on. Let's go to, let's go to data. See how similar these two are. So there are some differences here, but like for instance, here you've got, you can pull in external data from an Access database, from the web, from text, from other sources. Here that does exist, but let me find it. Import text, import data. Import data, import text. So you can see the functions are similar. They might be in a slightly different spot. You might have to look for it. But if there's something that you use regularly in Microsoft Office, you're going to find it that it's here in WPS Office. They legally, to my understanding, without breaking any copyrights or patents or anything like that, they were heavily influenced by Microsoft Office. We'll put it that way. And so they look very similar, and that should make it easy to use. I want to make this video kind of short because I'm not getting super in-depth in the details because I'm losing sunlight. So here's the default calendar. This is called the GNOME calendar. It comes with the GNOME desktop. Even though this is the Budgie desktop with Linux, you can install things that might seem to not fit. You can install together. And here is the Windows calendar. Now, I do think the Windows calendar looks a little bit nicer. However, I also believe that the GNOME calendar and that the EdUBudgie calendar is a little bit more performant. And so this is where you get the difference between an operating system that'll run really well on a Chromebook, even if it's only a dual-core, 1.5 gigahertz Celeron with 4 gigs of memory, versus Windows 10 recommending, really heavily recommending, at least 8 gigabytes of memory, and at least a dual-core 4-thread machine, or really 4-core plus at this point with Windows 10. So there are some niceties here, but that you lose on EdUBudgie, but not functionality. The functionality is still there. I mean, as you can see, you can pull in online accounts. I think I had a doctor's appointment somewhere in here. Yeah, there it is. You can change the view. They're very similar, and you can customize this to a certain extent as well. You can add weather to it. Again, you can add multiple online accounts, like you can do with the typical Windows app. Of course, you can switch to day, week, month, year, and I believe that's sync when you have an account already connected. Add calendars down here. Here is where you would add, I believe, from different accounts. These are nationality calendars. At any rate, I do believe that there's a spot to add in calendars. Manage accounts right here. Yeah, so you can add an account this way, which actually seems a little bit easier. Just 2 clicks and you're there versus having to figure it out in multiple clicks. But at any rate, they're very similar in terms of functionality. The Windows one does look a bit nicer, but not really needed. And again, when you're looking for performance on a budget, that's where EdUBudgie really shines, especially compared to Windows 10. But it doesn't give up in terms of stability, in terms of being able to update without crashing, without messing things up, without you having to system restore. And again, you don't have the issue with viruses. So there are a few downsides. I don't want to, I don't want to mislead you there. But they tend to be aesthetic rather than functional. We'll look at one more here. This is the GNU image manipulation program, which is available. Let me see, which is available for Windows. I don't have it on this machine, however, but it can be installed. It is free on Windows, and so in that case, you're truly comparing two apps that are exactly the same. But just to show some of the differences, here is one called Paint.net, which is built on the .NET platform that Microsoft has, Microsoft.net, which therefore you cannot use in Linux. And here is a GNU image manipulation program, essentially the equivalent. Now, there are differences. Without me being, sorry, some bugs here. Without me being, a Photoshop expert, I can't really get into what all of the differences are, but there are certainly differences. But what you'll see is your tools, your palette, layers. You've got layers here, tools. Palette is right there, and then you can do some different feathering and things like that. Depending on what tool you use, you'll get different options here, of course. They're really quite similar, and both of these, both Paint.net and the GNU image manipulation program, serve as sort of a bridge between Paint, like Microsoft Paint, like the very basic, simplistic thing, and Photoshop, where it's not quite fully featured, quite as fully featured as Photoshop, but it's got a lot, and for most users, it's perfectly adequate. It's perfectly fine, whether you go with Paint.net on Windows or whether you go with GNU image manipulation program on Linux. Let me see. There are a lot of apps actually that are cross-platform. So like I'm using OBS to record this. I can also record it with OBS in Linux if I had it installed natively rather than running it in a virtual machine. Many applications are like that. Now the settings are quite different, and you'll have to get used to that, but I don't think that that's going to be difficult for most users. Here you see you've got sort of a grid list, system, devices, phone, etc. Here you see you've just got a line of things where you can add users, change the region, and so forth, add printers, which I will say Linux does a really good job of adding networked printers, something that schools typically have. Windows does an okay job. Linux does tend to have more generic drivers, so there might be some very specific feature that you don't get with Linux that you do get with Windows, but then normally to get that with Windows you have to install proprietary software as well, and you get a bunch of junkware along with it. So again, it's sort of a balance of what features are important to you, but Linux pretty much has you covered unless it's a very obscure, weird one-off printer, in which case you might struggle to make it work. And in that case, I suggest recommend contacting the manufacturer if you run into that. Let me see. There were one or two other things I thought that I would bring up here. I mean, again, you've got a standard calculator on Windows. You've got that on Linux, but you've also got this Calculate with a Q app, which is installed by default, which is really much higher end. I'm sure that you can get those for Windows as well, but it's built into EdUBudgie Linux. There's no need to look for it. Chrome is exactly the same. Let's see here. There's Chrome on Linux. Oh, I don't have the internet turned on at the moment, so it won't actually connect to anything. But you do see that even the favorites bar is exactly the same. I mean, it's a mirror image of one another. So if you're comfortable using Chrome on Windows, you'll be comfortable with it on EdUBudgie. If you decide to switch to Firefox, because that's your preferred browser, you can install that on EdUBudgie using the Software Center that I mentioned in the last video, and it will work exactly the same as Firefox does in Windows. The only one thing I would say is there's a package format called Snap that's used for Ubuntu, and I wouldn't recommend that only because it's kind of slow opening up, but it's convenient. So you can use it if you need to, but I don't have Snap pre-installed on this because of that lack of performance, at least initially opening things up, and because this is made for lower end systems specifically. That said, you don't lose any functionality. That is going to be consistent across the board. You lose nothing using Linux in terms of functionality when compared to Windows for the programs that I'm showing you at least. Now there are some bespoke programs that you get for Windows that you simply can't get for Linux. Call of Duty Modern Warfare, I don't believe will run natively in Linux at least. You can get it to run through some third-party players like Steam, things like that. You may need Proton. There are ways to get those things to function, but not straight out of the box. This isn't made for that. This is made for students. Transmission is a BitTorrent client. Transmission is available for Linux. There's a WhatsApp app for this. There's a WhatsApp app for Linux as well, although Rambox has that built in, so you don't actually need it. You can simply use Rambox if you choose to. I'm using the VirtualBox Virtual Machine Manager. That's available for Linux. AnyDesk is available for both. Really, everything here, all of my most used programs are also available in Linux, and that's why I'm able to go to Linux at any point in time and seamlessly switch over once I've logged into my Google accounts. So anyways, apart from that, you'll see that the UI is similar. Now again, this is up in the corner, in the upper corner rather than the lower corner, but here you can see battery percentage, and it's actually showing the percentage from Windows. Volume. I guess you can't see that because I think my face is in the way, but you know what the Windows volume looks like. Internet, and you can open up network settings from there. Time, and you can open up the calendar from there. And then this is called the Raven menu, something extra that Windows doesn't have, which has the calendar. It will show songs that are playing. There are a few other things here. You can show devices that are plugged in. And then notifications, which notifications by default show up in this corner beneath the app's logo, basically beneath the menu, as opposed to being down in the corner below where my face is right now on Windows, simply as a stylistic change. Again, not a functional change whatsoever. So I want to be super clear about this. You're losing nothing switching over to Linux as a student or as a teacher 98, 99% of the time. If you have something specific that needs to run on here, like Photoshop or perhaps AutoCAD, you might struggle with that. Typically, that's not the case with high school. But again, it can be in university. And you may have a problem with that, in which case, switch over. The other thing that you can do is you can run Linux side by side on the same exact machine as Windows at the same time. So you can have Windows installed on the machine on one hard drive, let's say a 256 gigabyte SSD, and you can install Linux in the free space of that disk, not in a virtual machine, natively installed. And then you choose which one you want to boot to when you boot it up. And in fact, this machine right here has Windows and also the regular Ubuntu version, not EdUBudgie, but Ubuntu. And then once I'm in Windows, I can run EdUBudgie in a virtual machine. And shortly here, I will actually replace Ubuntu with EdUBudgie on my actual hard drive. I simply haven't had a chance to do it yet. So you have plenty of options where if you know that you need a Windows machine, you can still reboot into Windows to use it for that very specific purpose. Maybe limit it to 80 gigabytes. And then for the other, whatever it is, 176 gigabytes, use that for Linux. Anyways, that's all I've got. I'm running out of time and daylight, I think, here. But hopefully that was helpful for folks. If you have questions, contact me. You can go to the webpage, edubudgie.com. You can comment down below in this YouTube video. And have a great day.